2시에 당일 대응해라다. 템 그래.
Dinan Trimido. So the book that was launched was written by Tsering Sanam from Saspol, and they're saying that it contains the visit of His Holiness and his teachings for the last 50 years in Ladakh. And they also have made a new film, the first feature film of Ladakh. CD도 가렸어. Film. And the CD, which contains a film, will be distributed freely for people. So today is the third and the concluding day for the teaching, public teaching, of the public teaching, and so first I'll continue with the 6th chapter on patience, and then after that I'll do the initiation or empowerment for longevity based on Aryatara. And then after that, there is going to be a long life puja offering for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and therefore you as the disciples should make your fervent prayers for my long life. And then the Lama, as the Lama, I should also make the intention and determination to fulfill your goal. Although it is said that the karmas that you create will not be wasted. It is said that if the disciples make prayers for the Lama, and the Lama makes prayers for the disciples, and they will be fulfilled. And similarly, and because of the spiritual bond between this disciple and the Lama, and similarly between the parents and then their children, when the parents die, and if the children make prayers and for the late parents, it can help. And then also amongst the siblings and family members, if someone dies, the other family members make prayers and so forth for the dead, and that also can help. These are mentioned by the Kadamba master Podowa. And so as the disciples, you should make your fervent prayer for my long life, and with regard to the Tenshuk, the long life puja offering ceremony, and I also will have my prayers for the fulfillment of that. And then later, the chief minister of this Jammu and Kashmir state will come here. So while I do the preparatory ritual for this long life offering, so recite these prayers, prayer or praise to the Shakyamuni Buddha, which is called the 3 continuous practices. So today, I pay homage to the Gautama who, moved by his compassion, taught us the holy Dharma to rid us of all distorted views. So this is summoning all kinds of sentient beings, like gods, non-gods, demigods, and so forth, to come forth and listen to the teaching of the Buddha. And the teaching is said to be like the nectar to the ear, and therefore it's worth listening to. And I'll give teaching in the languages of all different beings, like gods, nagas, and so forth. So we'll continue from where we left yesterday in chapter 6. So we are on verse number 87, which is on page 67 if you have the red book. Even if your enemies made unhappy, what is there for you to be joyful about? And you're merely wishing for them to be heard, did not cause them to be endured. So even if you may bear some malicious thought against someone, that will not harm the person in any way. But even if it should hurt or harm the other one, what you are creating is bad karma. In reality, what happens here is that whether you are able to harm the other person or not with that malicious thought, you make yourself unhappy, and there's no benefit of it for yourself as well. So we usually do not like, we like praises from others and not criticism. And also we like to offerings and honoring from others. They will not help us for our long life or for our strength, gaining strength, physical strength, and for increasing our wealth and so forth. And they will not help in gaining more merit as such. So out of these eight worldly concerns, if you really think about, realistically, they don't really help us. This is a blessing for the tea. The qualities of the Buddhas are inconceivable, the qualities of Dharma are inconceivable, the Sangha are inconceivable, and making this offering to the inconceivable ones has inconceivable merit. So verse number 91 on page 868. So you may gain some kind of a temporary satisfaction, gratification. If you think only to have that kind of gratification, then you may do whatever you want, like drinking alcohol, taking drugs, or smoking cigarettes, and so forth. If you use common sense, this temporary satisfaction, even if you may have it, they really harm. We don't want physical harm to ourselves, and we don't want to lose our fame and so forth, but want fame. And so, if for the sake of fame, verse number 92, I give away my wealth or get myself killed, what can the mere words of fame do then? Once I have died, to whom will they give this pleasure? When their sandcastles collapse, children howl in despair. Likewise, when my praise and reputation decline, my mind becomes like a little child. Since short-lived sounds are inanimate, they cannot possibly think of praising me. But as it makes the bestower of praise happy, So when you make someone happy, then you don't really gain much. So when you are praised, you may feel happy. And when you praise somebody, for example, the person may be happy, but that doesn't help you as such. Whether this praise is directed to myself or someone else, how shall I be benefited by the joy of the one who bestows it? Since that joy and happiness is theirs alone, I shall not obtain even a part of it. So when you are praised, what happens is it increases your arrogance. When you are criticized, it actually helps to crush your arrogance. Verse number 98. Praise and so forth distract me and also undermine my disillusion and so forth. So the poor people, and for poor people, the praises and so forth may not make much difference. But as you become more wealthier and famous and so forth, then they make some difference to you. And similarly, with regard to monks who live who are very simple, these praises and so forth may not matter much, but when they become more educated, more learned and famous, then, these have some influence on them. I start to envy those who have good qualities, and all the very best is destroyed. Therefore, are not those who are closely involved in destroying my praise and the like also involved in protecting me from falling into the unfortunate trance? So when someone praises you, there's risk of becoming arrogant, and therefore those who criticize and despise you should be looked at as your teacher for the practice of patience. I, who am striving for freedom, do not need to be bound by material gain and honor, so why should I be angry with those who free me from this bondage? Those who wish to cause me suffering are like Buddhas bestowing waves of blessings. So the criticisms and to you, even if they may obstruct your creation and gaining of merit, there's no reason why I should be angry with them. So patience, practice of patience is the best means to gain merit. But what if someone should obstruct my gaining merit with them too? It is incorrect to be angry. For since there is no fortitude similar to patience, surely I should put it into practice. If due to my own failings I am not patient with this enemy, then it is only I who am preventing myself from practicing this course for gaining merit. And so, when certain cause without which the effect would not arise, so the cause of patience, which is the result, and for that you need someone to provoke anger in you, then it is only I who am preventing myself from practicing this course for gaining merit. If without it something does not occur, and if with it does come to be, then since this enemy would be the cause of patience, how can I say that this enemy prevents it? A beggar is not an obstacle to generosity when I'm giving something away. And I cannot say that those who give ordination are an obstacle to becoming ardent. So for your attainment of enlightenment, the most important cause is compassion, and the obstacle to it is that of anger, and patience is that antidote to that anger. So the merit that, or the virtues that you gain through the practice of patience, and therefore you should dedicate the merit that you gain through the practice of patience to those who have provoked or provokes anger in you. But surely the enemy is not to be venerated, for they intend to cause me harm. 110 on 71. So it's saying that the enemy or the adversary does not have that of the intention to do good to us. So that is not necessary, Shantideva is saying, because the true cessation that you develop within yourself doesn't have any thought to help us, and therefore you cannot say that true cessation is not the object of refuge for us. So this is a really good debate that he's actually putting forth, argument putting forth. But why should my enemies be venerated? He has no intention for me to practice patience. Then why venerate the sacred dharma? It too has no intention, but is a fit to cause practice. Fit cause for practice. That is talking about the true cessation. And then the next verse, but surely my enemy is not to be venerated, for they intend to cause me harm. But how could patience be practiced if, like doctors, people always strove to be good, to do me good? So when a doctor treats you, of course, you go through surgery and cutting parts of your limbs and so forth, but you never become angry at the doctors. So because the enemy, the so-called enemy, give you the opportunity to practice patience, therefore you need to consider them precious. Thus, since patient acceptance is produced in dependence upon one with a very hateful mind, that person should be worthy of veneration, just like the sacred dharma, because they are a cause of patience. So they should be venerated or revered highly, like that of the sacred dharma. Therefore, the mighty one has said that the field of sentient being is similar to the Buddha field. And so to become a Buddha, half of the causes those of sentient beings and half the Buddhas. And therefore, those who provoke anger gives you the opportunity to practice patience. The greater your patience develops, I mean, your practice of compassion and love and compassion, affection will be greater towards sentient beings. For us, of course, what happens is we we love and have affection towards those near and dear ones, those who are good to us, but not towards those who are considered as our enemies, who harm us. But when you are able to develop that love and compassion towards the enemies themselves as well, I mean, that's a real compassion or love. So from this verse down, a few of these verses show, I mean, that the those who provoke anger and the so-called enemies are the sources of our practice of patience. So when we are talking about practicing compassion, we need to be able to have an equilibrium state of mind so that our compassion encompasses all equally. And that happens when you are able to show patience towards those who provoke anger. So in short, So wherever merit comes from, venerating one with a loving mind is due to the eminence of sentient beings. And in the same way, the merit of having faith in the Buddha is due to the eminence. I think verse number 113, sorry. A Buddha's qualities gained from the sentient beings and the conquerors alike. So you have compassion, focused on those of sentient beings, as I referred yesterday, that the Bodhisattvas, with their compassion, focuses on sentient beings. So why do I not respect in the same way as I respect the conquerors? So while revering and respecting the Buddhas, it is wrong not to show your respect to the sentient beings. So becoming a Buddha is, on the one hand, due to the thanks to the Buddhas, and also on the other hand, thanks to the sentient beings. So their kindness to us are equal. Of course, they are not similar in the quality of their intentions, but only in the fruits that they produce. So, of course, from the point of view of the positive qualities of sentient beings and Buddhas are not equal. But for attaining Buddhahood, they are equal in serving as causes for that. So it is in this respect that they have excellent qualities and are therefore said to be equal. So when you practice love and compassion towards sentient beings, wherever merit comes from, venerating one with a loving mind is due to the eminence of sentient beings. And in the same way, the merit of having faith in the Buddha is due to eminence of Buddha. Therefore, they are asserted to be equal in the share they have in establishing Buddha qualities. So it's hot out there, the sun. In the sun, you should cover your hands. So this is telling the monks and nuns. And then the children are asked to come up on stage next and sit right in front of His Holiness during the teaching. And after the teaching and the initiation, when the chief minister comes, we'll have a different function, and so you should go to your place, back to your place. His Holiness is telling the students. His Holiness is asking to offer the ceremonial sweetened rice to the kids. But none of them are equal in qualities with the Buddhas, who are boundless oceans of excellence. Even if the three rams were offered, it would be insufficient in paying veneration to those few beings in whom a mere share of good qualities of the unique assemblage of excellence appear. Thus, since sentient beings have a share in giving rise to the supreme Buddha qualities, surely it is correct to venerate them as they are similar in merely this respect. So those who are suffering, we should cultivate suffering, compassion. And those who lack happiness, we should cultivate love or loving kindness towards them. And so through these, we create very powerful causes for attaining Buddhahood. That means that in dependence on sentient beings, we create those positive energies. So furthermore, what way is there to repay the Buddhas who grant immeasurable benefit and who befriend the world without pretension, other than by pleasing sentient beings? Of course, we do venerate and we say we take refuge in the Buddhas, but the Buddhas, in the beginning of their path, I mean, when they wished to enter the path, they actually did so in order to serve sentient beings. Even during the Bodhisattva, while engaging in Bodhisattva deeds, we have stories in the Jataka tales where we find stories about the Bodhisattvas who were to become Buddhas, serving and helping animals like birds and so forth. And so the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are always dedicated for the well-being of these sentient beings who are helpless, who are without happiness, full of suffering. And so if we disregard the well-being of sentient beings, and if we abuse them, we bully them, and do all kinds of negative things towards them, what would the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas think? So if we have a friend who has a dog, and if we hit the dog, we would immediately think, if I hit this dog, I mean, what would my friend think about me? And so similarly, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattva Sanghas consider other sentient beings more important and more precious than themselves, dearer than themselves. So they are solely dedicated for the well-being of sentient beings. And while we disregard their well-being, I mean, if we try to still say we take refuge in the Buddhas and so forth, that's a contradiction, inconsistency in our action. Therefore, since benefiting these beings will repay those who give their bodies and enter the deepest hell for their sake, I shall behave impeccably in all that I do, even if they cause me a great deal of harm. Usually what we do is when someone is powerful or have authority or wealth, we will not despise or we will not belittle them. But of course, if we don't like them, we might do backbiting secretly behind them. But to the poor people, we usually despise them and disregard their well-being. But the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are especially dedicated or kind and loving towards those poorer beings. When for their sake, those who are my lords have no regard even for their own bodies, then why am I the fool so full of self-importance? Why do I not act like a servant towards them? Because of their happiness, the conquerors are delighted. However, if they are harmed, the conquerors are displeased. Hence, by pleasing them, I shall delight the conquerors, and by harming them, I shall hurt the conquerors. Verse number 122 on page 73. So this altruistic spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta, when you cultivate it, what we are doing is, in order to fulfill the goals of oneself and others, there's no greater cause for serving sentient beings in the end, and also no greater cause for delighting the Buddhas. Just as desirable sense objects, 122 again. Just as desirable sense objects would give my mind no pleasure in my body, if my body was ablaze with fire, likewise when living creatures in pain, there's no way for the compassionate ones to be pleased. Therefore, as I have caused harm to living beings today, I openly declare all my unwholesome actions that have brought the displeasure to the compassionate ones. Please bear with me, O Lords, for this displeasure I have caused you. From now on, in order to delight the Tathagatas, I shall serve the universe and definitely cease to cause harm. So you are making your pledge here. So he's always asking the kids in front of him if they know these 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langri Thangpa. Whenever I associate with others, may I look upon myself as the lowest and wholeheartedly consider them the supreme. So what this shows is showing humility. You hold yourself the lowliest of all. And so when you have that kind of attitude, it helps to not to have any kind of negative emotions within yourself. So it helps you not to have arrogance and so forth. Although many beings may kick and stamp upon my head, even at the risk of dying, may I delight the protectors of the world by not retaliating. There is no doubt that those with the nature of compassion regard all these beings the same as themselves. Furthermore, those who see in the Buddha see this Buddha nature as the nature of sentient beings also see the Buddhas themselves. Why then do I not respect sentient beings? So in Buddha Dharma in general, and particularly in the Sanskrit tradition, there is mention of what is known as Tathagata Garbha, or Sugata Hridaya, or usually translated as Buddha nature. So we have a mind which has some link with the brain as well. But the nature of this mind is a mere experience, has that quality of cognition, being cognitive about objects. So in the Buddha, within the Buddha's mind, there is this knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. So we say that what we are not able to see or fathom, the Buddhas are able to see them. So the wisdom, knowledge of the Buddha, the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha, its fundamental cause is within us, which is this clear, luminous nature of the mind, which has the cognitive nature. As we are able to reduce those obstacles and obstacles to the full knowledge of everything, we will have greater and greater knowledge of things. And so this very luminous nature of the mind goes all the way to the state of the state of Buddhahood, and therefore it is termed as the essence of Buddhahood, or essence of Buddha, or Tathagata Garbha. So this is the basis on which we say that we can become omniscient because of this cognitive, luminous nature of the mind. So of course there are sensory perceptions which are related with our sense organs. But there is also the sixth mind. So when we die, what happens is there comes a time when the heart stops pumping blood, and heart stops working, and then the blood stops flowing into the brain. So after that, then there is brain death. So even after brain death or clinical death, there are cases where people's bodies remain very fresh. And so there are scientists who are doing some research on this phenomenon called Thukdam, where people are said to be in some kind of a meditative state. And so, of course, the brain has died, but the body, the corpse, remains very fresh. Why does it happen? And so, in our tradition, we say that the mind, the subtle mind, is still within the body. Though the gross mind is not still there, the subtle mind is still within the body, and because of it, the body remains fresh. So this subtle mind is independent from the body. But the gross states of mind are dependent on the brain, and therefore when the brain stops working, they are no more active. And so the subtle mind is independent from the body, this body that we have. So for those who accept or assert life after life, explain it on the basis of this subtle mind, which goes from one life to the next. And therefore, when you are able to develop this mind and further, this clear nature, luminous nature of the mind, further and further, so this subtlest mind is the one which is the fundamental cause that leads us to attain Buddhahood. And of course, in the process of developing our path, we also meditate on the nature of emptiness of the mind itself. And so, when you become a Buddha, there is the physical dimension of a Buddha, such as the Rupakaya, or the and Nirmanakaya, within which there is, and these come from some causes and conditions. They are called compounded phenomena. So, why then do I not respect sentient beings? Verse 126 go on. So all sentient beings in general, and particularly those of the ones who are your enemies, pleasing living beings delights the Tathagatas. And I mean, when you are really show respect to these, and then they please the Buddhas and perfectly accomplish my own purpose as well. In addition, it dispels the pain and misery of the universe. Therefore, I should always practice it. So if you are an intelligent one, and if you really intelligently wish to serve yourself well, you should hold other sentient beings to be dearer than yourself. For example, should some of the king's men cause harm to many people, far-sighted ones would not return the harm, even if they were able to do so, for they see that these men are not alone, but are supported by the might of the king. Likewise, I should not underestimate weak beings who cause me a little harm, for they are supported by the guardians of the hell and by all the compassionate ones. So, behaving like the subjects of that fiery king, I should please all sentient beings. Even if such a king were to become angry, could he cause the pain of hell, which is the fruit I would have no experience. I would have to experience by dispelling sentient beings. So the sentient beings are the ones to whom, indirectly or directly, we should do good and help them and not harm them. And even if such a king were to be kind, even if such a king were to be kind, he could not possibly grant me Buddhahood, which is the fruit I would obtain by pleasing sentient beings. So if you look at those great personalities like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and Nelson Mandela, they were the ones who really were dedicated for the well-being of others. And therefore, they are praised and liked by people in India. For example, in the case of Mahatma Gandhi, if you look at his picture, you'll see him wearing just a thin cloth around his body. But because of his altruism, he is praised and liked by people. So even while you are in samsara, and why do I not see that my future attainment of Buddhahood, as well as glory, renown, and happiness in this very life, all come from pleasing sentient beings? And so, if you cultivate altruism within yourself and also practice patience, then even in this life, you may not work for fame, gain, honor and so forth, but they will come to you excellently, and not only in this life, but even life after life. While in cyclic existence, patience causes beauty, health, and renown. Because of these, I shall live for a very long time and win the extensive pleasures of the universal chakra king. So I'll stop here for this year. And so next year, if I feel healthy, and I will come again, and then could continue the teaching. If I physically don't feel healthy, then this may not happen.